You're listening to a 3CR podcast of independent community radio station 3CR in Melbourne, Australia.
Radio MMT respectfully acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land from which we are broadcasting, the Wurundjeri people, and we are broadcasting to the Kulin Nations. Our focus is economics, that is, how stuff is produced and distributed. We recognise that for many tens of thousands of years, First Nations people's connection to country successfully embodied the world's oldest continuous economy, which was catastrophically disrupted by genocide and displacement. We acknowledge that we have much to learn to reshape our current extractive and exploitive system to achieve sustainable prosperity for everyone.
Radio MMT. Economics for the rest of us with Anne
and Kev.
Radio MMT.
Looking at the world through the lens of modern monetary theory.
Radio MMT. Macroeconomics for a well-being economy.
Macroeconomics? Isn't that incredibly boring?
No, Kevin, it's incredibly interesting. It's all about who gets what and why.
Who gets what and why? Okay, I'm in.
RadioMMT@gmail.com.
Incredibly interesting macroeconomics for the rest of us. Welcome to another episode of Radio MMT. It's Kevin here. Normally Anne's with us, but Anne's is a bit crook, so we're going to call in and speak to Anne later on because it's radiothon and she has to become involved. So in her stead, I have Kent Getzinger, who is going to introduce himself. And who are you, Kent?
Oh, thanks, Kev. Thanks for having me. And hey, everybody. My name's Kent, and I am with Kev and Anne in the group for Sustainable Prosperity Action Group, NARM. Also a organizer with the Victorian Allied Health Professionals Association. So in the union movement, solidarity to the nurses and midwives striking out there, and it's sound on for solidarity. So that's a theme.
Excellent. So what we can see here is that MMT has spread into the union movement, and soon it'll take over the rest of the world, and that's terrific. And this could only happen because programs like this are able to be aired on stations like this. You won't hear a show like this anywhere else in Australia, possibly the world, and that's because of the support of our listeners, the people who support this station 3CR with all its various causes, etc. Ours is macroeconomics, so we're here to open people's eyes, to lift the bonnet on the economy and have a good look under there to see how it properly works, and that's done with your help. Now, we've got some people who've already donated to our show, and we're very happy with that. Neil Halliday, who is a regular contributor, and we very much appreciate his support. He's given... I'm not going to give amounts because I think you give what you can afford. All I can say is that Neil is very generous. We have John Kent, who is also a very generous supporter. Joseph from the station, who just is a marvellous person and helps out with every show. Holly Reagan, Jim Koppel, and Marion Chincotta. These are the people I have so far. There may be others. What I'd suggest is that I think that if everybody who listened to this show could give a small amount, $10 or $20, then we would easily reach our target. But of course, we know in this world that some people may not be in a position to give anything, and that's perfectly fine. We don't want to impose burdens on those that are stressed. So that puts it on the rest of you who can. You need to help out for those who can't help. And if you're in a really good position to help, then you need to dig deep. But if we can all just give a little, we'll reach our target. $5, $10, $20, we'll take anything. And if we reach our target, this station is not what you call a flash station. This is a lovely, well-worn, comfortable radio station, but there's plenty that we could do if we had a little bit more. So we encourage you to keep shows like this and all the other shows on 3CR on air by donating. We need your help. We need to raise just under $300,000 in total for this radiothon, for this station to continue. That's not a lot of money when you compare it to other stations, but it's a lot of money for us, and we rely on our subscribers and donors to make that happen. So please dig deep. You can do that by calling the station on 03 9419 8377. I'll give that again. It's 03 9419 8377. Or you can go to the website. Just go to 3cr.org.au MMT.com/donate. You'll find it. You're all tech heads out there. You know how it works. Jump on the website, track down the donate button, and send us your money. Nobody here is rich, and we're all volunteers, bar a couple of the skeleton staff that get paid probably not enough. So we could certainly use your help. Now, let's get back to the show, Kent. What are we talking about this week? What have we got organised?
MMT, maybe?
MMT?
Should we chat about that? Yeah, like it's solidarity, a couple bucks to donate. And, it's what you can. As we say in the movement, there's strike funds. It's passing the hat. We're chatting about money in some sense on the show.
MMT.
That's right.
I'm very pleased that we've got people like yourself involved in the union movement who are not just sort of glancing at MMT, but you're heavily involved in it. You're studying a course, doing MMT.
So it's the Master of Economics of Sustainable Prosperity. And so basically this degree is really the fusion of MMT, modern monetary theory, well-founded theoretical basis of how the real world actually works, and with that understanding how it could work better, how we could fund actually the things that we need in our community, that people would have more money to donate to 3CR, that we could address the climate crisis.
I guess the common perception is that there's limited funds to address a lot of the problems that we have in our society, and what you're learning through your course and what I'm learning, because I don't do courses, I let other people do courses, then they go and ask you.
We chat about it at the pub.
Never read a book unless you have to. It's my motto. I'll never read a manual. I'll find somebody that already has. You're
that's why I'm here.
That's why fine. You do the course and you tell me all about it. That's what we like. So, but what we're learning is that this fallacy, this misinformed concept that governments need to find money, and if they can't find the money, then programs don't proceed. I guess this is one of the main things about MMT. It dispels that idea. Yeah,
in the group that we're a part of, at the Sustainable Prosperity Action Group, NARM, which came out of a group that some people came out of a group in Adelaide. That's a name that's, I think, actually Fadel Kabab, one of these scholars, but also I think he's actually a massive activist because he does a lot of work in helping the Global South overcome and basically pursue what we call monetary sovereignty through the horrendous oppression that colonial powers have put on the Global South and so forth. I think that global prosperity sort of has come from that, just to give a bit of that sort of history. But, and personally, I don't love the acronym. I think this should be the mainstream thought, but we're so far away from that. It
would be nice if what actually happens in the economy became mainstream, as opposed to perpetuating this myth that we live by. And I've spoken to Anne about this before. We'd like it to become mainstream. The only unfortunate thing about that is that this show would then become defunct because we wouldn't be able to.
Oh, no, you keep going. No, that you have a regular spot, Kevin.
Because everybody would know then, and we wouldn't have to inform anybody. And so,
sometimes, like we say in the union movement, we would love to work ourselves out of this job.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
So basically, I think anybody joining who's new, who hasn't listened to the show before, that basically. There was a challenge to describe it in 30 seconds, and it's a challenge.
Anne gave that to me a little while ago. Would you like to rise to this challenge?
I'll try.
Okay,
I'll do my best.
Right, yeah. This was Anne put me up against Stephanie Kelton.
Ooh,
and I thought she started ranting a bit. I thought she started getting technical.
Right, yeah.
Okay, so anyway,
we're all learning all the time.
Right? So here's a challenge. Describe
MMT in 30 seconds.
That
was a challenge.
In 30 seconds or less.
So that basically MMT is a real world, theoretically established understanding of how the economy actually works, on the basis that a national government that issues currency, such as Australia, the UK, Canada, Japan, US, cannot go insolvent on its currency, and that it is not restrained by how much taxes it collects, and therefore that the currency that it issues is effectively a public good. It is a lens. It is not something we do, but it is a lens to view reality, as a theory that we could use to ensure that we have, it's often called the public good, but we could have the fundamental human rights that we need for a democratic society, for a society of inclusion, of belonging, and of justice, that we could actually have full employment and ensure that no one is suffering as they are now.
Okay, I think that was longer than 30
That was
seconds.
probably longer than 30 seconds. We're
but-
getting there. We're
but
getting there.
It wasn't a bad description. There's a comparison that I like to make, especially in this country where we live right now. And I like to think of where we are now and what was happening here, right here where we are, 300 years ago.
Yeah.
300 years ago, there was an economy, and an economy is defined as a distribution of resources amongst a community. So the economy that existed right here, right where we are right now, had no money, and they still were able to distribute resources amongst their population as they had done for tens of thousands of years successfully. But it certainly goes back a lot further than a lot of Western
Absolutely,
history. So we don't need money to exist, and this is what kind of gets me a bit interested. Is the focus should be on the distribution of resources, not the money. You don't need money to distribute resources. But what we do have is this monetary system, and it's being misused and misinformed to restrict the distribution of resources through a community, primarily, from what I can see, due to greed. It's like people want to accumulate numbers and stop the distribution. So I always like using that as a reference because we sort of presume that this system that we've been running has always been there and there's been nothing else. But here we are.
And absolutely, we did not recognize the fact that before the colonial invasion of this country, that basically there was a thriving economic system. And
they ate, they were clothed, they were housed, they achieved all of the functions that are required for human beings to live a comfortable existence. And yet here we are saying, we can't do things because we haven't got enough money, which is a man-made invention. To me, that seems insane.
And what's interesting, Kev, on that, and you have read a book, actually. You're not being truthful about that because we have discussed David Graeber's debt.
Yes.
We have chatted about that. And I think that, the notion that what is money, that what is this? I mean, we often think money, okay, I have a note or it's a number in my bank account or something like that. This concept basically is this dualistic social construction, a social institution of credit and debt that is one person's obligation to another. And I think one thing that certainly Graeber goes into in the debt, the first 5,000 years, is talking about, well, before monetary systems existed, it was a human economy, effectively.
Right.
And you're right. It is about the distribution of resources and the critical question, we should say, of how that is done. Even the common conception, which has just been basically shoved down our throats through, yes, greedy capitalist interests, and that have pushed on us a false notion of scarcity. And that is causing so many issues that we're having at the moment, that we are engaged in, and that there are powerful interests that benefit from the system being unequal, and that benefit from that. It's the commodity money system that Marx and Keynes really overlapped on, that to say it's a monetary system that changing it back into to gain more profit in the Marxist sense.
They challenged a lot of the preconceptions, which is good. Now I know if Anne was here, she would be saying, look, you can run a monetary system that is fair, that
absolutely
would help us, would actually might improve the system of distribution if it was run fair. But that requires understanding the monetary system, understanding where money comes from, and we understand it in MMT as being an instrument of government, which is used to provision itself, and then beyond that, to enable people to trade and to have some excess currency to perform these systems of exchange that might otherwise be quite complicated. The conventional view is that money is an instrument of the private sector, of private human beings, and that it came from the barter system. And the Graeber book dispels that myth very effectively. If money was a private thing, it would say on the bottom of my $10 bill, this was issued by Kevin Gaynor, but it doesn't. It says it's issued by the Reserve Bank of Australia. And remember, government is a representative of the community. So we're talking about the community organising its capacity to, I don't know, it could be more efficient to do things with money rather than to have all these committees that are constantly talking about stuff and not getting anything done. I don't know. So interesting. Anyway.
But Graeber goes to links in that book, and I think it was actually an anthropologist, that Carolyn Humphreys was her name, who said there was no evidence that barter ever existed as a means of economic distribution. There weren't like gifts and stuff like this, but in terms of economic distribution barter was no evidence of that anthropologically.
But we're not saying that barter doesn't exist. We're saying that barter has existed and still exists today. What we're saying is that barter isn't the basis of a monetarized economy.
Yeah. And I think, Kev, like one big thing, I mean, the critical questions of the economy, of inequality, of capitalist oppression, and at least political economy, all these other things as well. I mean, one of the big things that sort of comes out for me in this is that fundamentally now the way it is actually truly constructed, it is a public utility. It is a public good, like you're saying. This isn't going to be a fight, basically, that we have to demand that this public utility, which is being hoarded by special interest, the military industry complex, basically, if we were to allow for full employment, if we were actually to do that, that would give power to the working class. That would mean that would stop this myth of the past 30, 40 years of neoliberalism and monetarism and so forth about this being a private commodity. Then that is something that is fundamentally ours, effectively.
Yes.
It is not private. And I think that's the biggest.
That's the battleground, isn't it?
It's
redefining money as a public utility as opposed to something that should be hoarded by somebody private to maximise their economic potential, which is basically called greed. I guess if we could push this concept that all money is public money, and that we are quite capable of provisioning everybody in our community quite well, so long as we get the distribution right, and that's done
absolutely,
and that's being sabotaged by this concept of private money and greed. We're going to have a bit of a break because it is Friday and people are driving home. And
they are,
their brains are coming out their ears.
And they're hearing us rant. Yeah.
Donate, by the way, because we're talking about money and we're talking about the public utility. You're the public. This is the utility. We need your money. Online via 3cr.org.au/donate. You'll find it. We'll go to a song and we'll get back to you soon.
3CR. Sound on for solidarity.
Aloha, Wominjeka, and hello.
Buenos dias.
3CR 855 AM.
Welcome to 3CR Community Radio, dear listeners.
Community Radio 3CR in Melbourne.
3CR Community Radio.
3CR Radio.
3CR is community owned and operated.
3CR.
3CR Melbourne.
Broadcasting from stolen land.
We're on the stolen lands of the Kulin Nation and we pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging.
The 3CR Radiothon through the month of June.
To donate, go to 3cr.org.au.
Call the station on 03 9419 8377
or drop in at 21 Smith Street, Fitzroy during business hours.
3CR 855 on your AM band.
3CR, your only radio left.
3CR, sound on for solidarity.
His way. All I need's a place to find, and there I'll celebrate.
You're on Radio 3CR. That was All I Need by Air, featuring Beth Hirsch. There you go. Nice song to drive home on a Friday evening. Now, Anne's normally on the show with us, but she's a bit crook. But she is available. We can call her on the line to get her in. What she wants to talk about is this concept not being able to afford things, and she's given me this little clip from ABC regarding fire ants. So I'm going to play this clip. And then after the clip, we'll bring in Anne and we'll have a bit of a talk about just the ludicrous nature of being a human being versus fire ants.
For a long time, fire ants were just seen to be an environmental problem. It's actually everyone's problem.
It's an enormous economic threat, the red fire ant. And today on Big Ideas, we're talking ferals at the Blue Mountains Music Festival's Heartland Conversations with writer, oral historian at the National Library of Australia, Greg Borschmann. He's catching up with Costa and one of the giants of Australian conservation, Andrew Cox, who is the CEO of the Invasive Species Council.
Andrew Cox has warned me that the barbecue stopper of Australia is already here. We're well aware of it. We're throwing hundreds of millions of dollars at it, but the problem is not fixed. Andrew Cox, what is the story of the red imported fire ant and why is it still haunting us?
It's one of those things that it doesn't matter what aspect of your life, it will impact on you. And we won't have any choice once it's spread beyond its that point where you can't eradicate it any longer.
It turned up in Brisbane 10, 12 years ago.
23 years ago, it arrived at a port of Brisbane, was detected. It'd probably been there for about 10 years beforehand. It's a little red, coppery brown ant, and because one nest doesn't compete with the other, they can form these very high densities, and basically anything on the ground is cactus. All the animals, if it's in your backyard, it'll attack you. When you disturb a nest, they flood on you and then they go up your legs or whatever, and then they bite in unison. And it's, for the human sort of threat, it's the anaphylactic reaction that is pretty dangerous. But for animals, they just get overwhelmed. You know, it's a really serious invader. and it's predicted to cover every part of Australia. Tens of thousands of queens and the drones, the males, mate, and then just land on the ground up to 5 kilometres, where the wind takes them. So these seeding events just occur and it spreads. And so even if we weren't assisting it, which we often do because it's also spread in mulch and dirt, it can just spread naturally kilometres every year. If we didn't have the control program that's been in place there since 2001, it would have already got to Sydney just by natural spread. So luckily we've got that control program, but it's not big enough. And the government, they've probably spent close to $1 billion already, and they've just upped the spending, so it's about $125 million a year. This is funded by federal and all the state governments, but we think it's probably not even enough to stop it because it is still slowly spreading. It's just got into New South Wales late last year, and I am worried.
If you were presenting an absolute bare-knuckled economic argument on why we should be doing more to eradicate the red imported fire ant, you could win this argument on economics alone.
Well, the economics is a lay-down misere. The cost, if it was allowed to spread to Australia, $2 billion a year, forever. We can see when there's a major health emergency like COVID that we can spin on a dime. We can, in one day, we've locked down the whole country. We can do it. Well, it took 2 years for the last funding decision to go through the grind of government.
One of the problems you're dealing with is we can't afford it. We don't have the money. There has been a proposal for some time now for, wait for it, a container tax. Now, I don't know how many containers come into Australia every year, but I suspect quite a few. That is where the invasive threat is. Is the industry paying for that threat? No. Why is it so difficult for Australia to put in place a container tax?
Global trade and travel, why don't we levy them? If we had $20, $30 put on every container that arrived in Australia, we'd be able to raise $300 million, $400 million, and we'd be able to fund these things. We'd be able to make sure we stop the next lot of fire ants that come into the country.
Are you there, Anne?
Kevin, hello.
Yep.
I'm beamed in from my self-isolation here.
Excellent, excellent. Well, good on you for being responsible and not infecting the whole studio.
As you and I know, Kevin, and I believe Kent's with you, is he?
Hi, Anne. Keeping your seat warm.
Kent. Thanks a lot. Kent and Kevin, you both know that MMT tells us that if we have the resources, that is, if we have the people and the technology and the know-how, then finding the dollars is not the problem. We can always find the money if we decide something is a priority. And so once you get that part under your belt, MMT is guaranteed to raise your blood pressure because every day you will come across decisions. Decisions are often detrimental to our well-being that are made on the basis that we can't afford it. But when you have an unmet need and you have the resources to meet that need and the government is simply refusing to spend the money, that's what gets your blood pressure up. So,
Indeed. So now, tell us about the fire ants. What's the situation that this clip that you sent me from the ABC? What's the gist of it?
Yes. Okay. So that was a clip that was part of the ABCRN Big Ideas with Natasha Mitchell, and it was broadcast on the 16th of May 2024. These fire ants, Kevin, these South American fire ants, they landed in Queensland a few years ago, and now they've managed to spread, and they've spread from Tweed Heads to Caboolture, if you can imagine that north-south area, and they're on Stradbroke Island. They've gone all the way into Toowoomba. And these fire ants, if you are a ground-living species, you cannot survive them. And these things, when they land on you, when they run up your legs, what they do is they bite you in unison. They're horrific.
They swarm. They gang up on you.
They gang up on you. And they say that if they're not eradicated, they have the potential to spread across the entire continent because unlike other ants, species, the colonies don't fight each other. They cooperate with each other. So they would just create one giant fire ant nest across the whole country. And when they look at the cost of the potential damage that they could do every year, the damage they would do would surpass the damage done by feral cats, wild dogs, foxes, camels, rabbits, and cane toads combined. All right, can you imagine? So you'd think we'd want to stop them, wouldn't you?
Well, yeah, but what's the problem? How come they can't stop it, Anne?
Well, they could. They've got the chemical that stops the queen from breeding. You can put these nests out in about 8 weeks, and you would want to know, Kevin.
Yes, indeed.
Why? And that is because the state and federal governments were wrangling over who should pay for it, and that put a halt to the eradication program for a couple of years, right? And in the meantime, these things spread from Queensland into New South Wales. So you know my reaction, Kevin, every time anyone says we can't afford to pay for something.
Well, I was just mentioning to Kent before, 300 years ago, if they had a problem like this, they would just solve it. They would go, rightio, we all need to find the red ant nests and destroy them. There'd be no talk about whether we can afford it or not, because there was no monetary system to hold it up. And what I'm pointing out by that is to say that the resource, the action, needs to take priority over wrangling over how you're going to organise it by throwing numbers around.
Right. And when you've got the state and federal governments arguing over it, it seems obvious to me that the federal government should be funding it, especially if they're running a $9 billion surplus at the moment.
There should be no such thing as a surplus unless all of the needs of the community have been met, as far as I'm concerned. Right. Surpluses serve no purpose other than to drain the private sector of excess funds. And whilst there are problems in the private sector, whilst there's homelessness, fire ants, anything you name, there should never be a surplus, as far as I'm concerned.
Exactly. And so I was thinking that if you can't afford to donate to the Radiothon this year, one thing you could do that can keep you and I very happy, Kevin, is CCing your letter to the Federal Treasurer, Jim Chalmers, to us, and just say to him, what on earth are you doing running a federal budget surplus when we have things like fire ants spreading through the country? Or, as you say, just name your issue of choice, and there are so many out there that are really just being held up by this ignorant understanding of how our monetary system works.
Yeah, it's kind of like you can see how the system is being sabotaged by self-interest and the damage that's causing. It just, fire ants mightn't be important to some people until they arrive in your backyard, and then you'll start thinking about it. I was thinking of the strategy of the fire ants though, where they don't fight each other and they collectively attack.
We're onto something there.
I think we should adapt those structures in the M&T movement. Yeah. Should learn from the fire ants.
They should become our little mascot, the fire ants.
Maybe not.
That might be the mascot. That's
the mascot of collective action. Yeah.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
Hey, so how are you? Well, Anne, you're sounding okay.
Yeah. Look, I'm feeling more normal than I've felt for the past week. I have to say, a few weeks ago, I felt like I had fire ants crawling all over my face.
Yeah. Right.
I haven't had a cold like this since before the lockdown, since we all started washing our hands.
Oh, well, it happens. If you haven't had a cold for a while, it's bound to hit you and wipe you out. So,
Yeah. It gave me plenty of time to think about what's a good example of something that infuriates me, when I see them arguing about how to pay for it.
Yeah, and it highlights the problem of how a system that is supposed to assist in a government provisioning itself and distributing resources throughout a community turns on itself and actually does the exact opposite.
We're undermining ourselves for no good reason.
Yeah.
And the other thing that this excerpt mentioned, have we got time for me to go into this now?
Sure, yeah. Always got time for you, Anne, always.
Is that they were suggesting that maybe we should have what they were calling a container tax in order to raise the money to be able to fight the fire ants. And I was thinking, well, of course, you don't need a container tax for the money, but it might be a good idea to have one just to change the mindset around importing goods, because the importers, I'm sure they're treating the contamination of imports with invasive species as an externality, right?
So you're using tax to change behaviour, not as a revenue raiser, and we agree with that use of tax here in MMT. You know, be it smoking or whatever it is, if you introduce a charge for bad behaviour, that's not a bad thing. It's good.
That's right. So you'd be a bit more careful about what's in your container, and you'd have a better price signal of the true cost of what it costs to import.
Yeah, and plus it would stop this just out of control capitalism where we just buy too much stuff. I saw some horrendous figures on the amount of wasted clothing in Australia is one of the worst offenders, just buying stuff and throwing it out.
The fast fashion.
Yeah, the fast fashion thing. Well, I have to admit, being at home for the past week, I'm guilty of doing a bit of online.
You've been doing that.
You've been online.
Nice.
That's don't do it, Anne. Don't
COVID pastime.
Don't turn into a capo dog.
Pastime.
But I did donate to 3CR. I donated some of my favourite shows. So.
Yeah. Indeed. Well, look, nice to hear from you, Anne. We're going to kick on with the show. We've got to harass people because apparently we're not getting enough people donating. They're listening. But they're probably too interested in listening and haven't donated. So we've got to rectify that situation.
Well, they've got the whole of June, don't forget. The whole of June is Radiothon month.
But don't wait. Just do it now. Get it out of the way.
Because it would give us a big buzz.
Yeah, it would. It'd be nice to talk on radio about it. And plus, people say, I'm going to do it and I'm going to do it. Get it out of the way. Just smack it out. $5, $10, $20, whatever you got.
It's always the most ironic day of the year for us, isn't it, Kevin?
Yeah, here we are.
About money all year round.
Here we are, kind of, critiquing the money system and saying how evil it is, and then we're asking people for it. So
donate the public good.
Donate the
public good.
Correct.
Salt for solidarity.
Anyway,
like a fire ant.
Nice to speak to you, Anne, and hopefully you'll be back for the next show.
Good to speak to Anne. Feel better.
See you, Kent. Bye, Kevin.
It was Anne, the normal co-host from Radio MMT. She sounded too well.
That's some solidarity, in theme of the Sound On for solidarity, not if they're being sick, even in our time of still COVID. We're not post-COVID.
Yep.
That is some solidarity.
That is some solidarity, guys. And now we need you to donate. It's very important. This show has a target, and we're nowhere near it, and we're relying on our listeners to get us to that target. If you've got some spare coin in your pocket and you want to change the world for the better, this is the best way to redistribute those excess funds, which is all public money, back to a public radio station.
Public community good.
Yeah. So call us on 03 9419 8377 or contact us via the interweb on 3cr.org.au/donate. Get onto it. We'll be back soon.
Fierce, independent community media is vital.
Blah, 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 blah. Blah, blah, blah. Blah, blah, blah.
Blah, 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 blah. Blah, blah, blah.
Blah, 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 blah.
We need your support to keep radical voices and issues on the airwaves.
The 3CR Radiothon through the month of June.
To donate, go to 3cr.org.au.
Call the station on 03 9419 8377.
Or drop in at 21 Smith Street, Fitzroy during business hours.
3CR. Sound on for solidarity.
We made life. We made here for love. Grow as we are now. Rooted here for love. Spinning here for love. Yeah.
You're on Radio MMT with Kev and Kent today. Anne just called in. We're here talking about all things macroeconomics. We heard then from Terza. Now, Terza actually played at the Forum last night. That was a song she had called Beating, and it was a tone remix. It's very nice and sumptuous and the rest of it. And actually, I'm playing that one for Alex from the station here as well. And Alex is a big fan of Terza's, been following her for 10 years. The show last night was... I'd call it deconstructed and stripped back. It was it wasn't like that. It was quite harsh.
Yeah, that wasn't deconstructed and stripped back.
So I'm playing that for Alex because I knew that she'd like something like that. We're nowhere near reaching our target here, Kent. It's a bit disappointing.
Got it. Sound on for solidarity, people. Whatever you've got, we know it's a manufactured cost of living crisis. It's community radio.
I have a theory as to why we might not be reaching a target. It's because we put this show out as a podcast afterwards, and I know a lot of people listen to the podcast.
That's how I usually listen to it.
Yes. Yeah. So all you podcasters out there who aren't listening to the show live, and you're now listening to the show as a podcast, you can do exactly the same as what we said before. Get on there and donate. And in fact, I think that you're a sophisticated person who is in podcasts and is embracing the wonders of society, etc. You really need to kick in, especially because, like podcasts, that's extra work for us. Just kicking a few bucks. It'd be nice.
What's the website?
For donating?
For donating.
For donating, it's 3cr.org.au/donate.
That one. Yep.
Now, we're talking about fire ants.
We're talking about fire ants.
And the public good and how the current monetary system is being used for evil and not good.
Well, when Anne was talking about the state and federal government blaming each other for not funding it, I kind of thought she was talking about the healthcare sector for a moment, quite frankly.
Yeah.
And batting it back and forth and saying, you fund it. We'll give this much funding, only if you give that much. And then worrying, of course, same thing, as they always do, about there's the myth, the pernicious myth that keeps coming around, the neoliberal myth that We can't find the money.
Can't find the money.
We can't find the money.
The whole health system thing. I think we were talking about this earlier. Of course, you're intricately involved with the health.
Yeah.
That's no, what's your role again?
So I'm an organizer with the Allied Health Union called VAPA. So if anyone, this is theme of donating here is Sound On for Solidarity. So join your union.
Yes.
Because we're talking about the redistribution. We're talking about our monetary system. We're talking about economic oppression and what it could be.
And solidarity.
That's
what we're talking about, To me, it seems insane that we have a health system that has trouble finding funds.
It's completely backwards.
And it's had a profit motive introduced to it.
Absolutely, yeah. And at risk of privatization. And the fact that, and I think this could even reflect the entire budget, that it's not about, it's set and allocated a budget rather than actual community need, especially rural and regional services, especially First Nations and Aboriginal communities are really, quite frankly, oppressed by not actually having access to services and, basically the health that we all need.
And we know that they can do it because when we were hit with a health crisis a few years ago called the COVID pandemic,
all of a sudden,
bang, all of a sudden they've gone, oh, righty, we've got a crisis. The excuse that the conservative politicians use is that they can't do that unless there's an emergency like World War II or a pandemic, etc. If there are people dying and suffering, that's an emergency. If there are people who are unhoused or are unhealthy, whose life expectancy is shortened because of living conditions, etc., that's an emergency. It doesn't have to be a wide-scale universal thing. If you're living in those conditions, every day is an emergency.
And I think the problem, Kev, is it's really that is just normalized, right? What comes to mind immediately is like the Hannah Arendt, banality of evil, right? I mean, this is just normal as we accept it. It's almost this tacit, acceptance of seeing homelessness, of actually seeing worse and worse conditions. It's like we are the frog in boiling water.
Yeah.
I don't want to call it a crisis because it is manufactured. It does not have to be this way.
It's by design,
It is, absolutely. Yeah. And it really is, bring it back to sort of context of what I think a lot of the MMT scholars, let's just say left in general, that basically there is we call it like a full employment framework. This is in the UN Declaration of Human Rights. I think it came out in 1948, that everyone has a fundamental human right of the access to healthcare, education, well-being, childcare, and of course, employment.
And to feel included and contributing to the functioning of a society. That's where you start, and then you make the figures fit around it. We're doing it the other way around.
We're doing it backwards. That's I think when we send the letter to Chalmers about fire ants, we're doing it. It's completely backwards.
Now we've had somebody has subscribed. Andre from Preston.
All right.
He's chipped in a decent amount.
All right.
I'm not going to say amounts because it becomes like a competition.
Yeah.
But
it's what you can.
Much appreciated, Andre. He's helping pick up the slack from other people who aren't. Let's put it that way. That's how much he's contributed, and we do need a few of you to do that if you can, because for some reason this show's going slow. I'm going to hit the people listening to the podcast. When you hear this, you've got no excuse. You can't hide behind the fact that it wasn't live. I'm calling you out. But get in there and jump online, send some money our way. That's what we need.
How do you feel when you donate to the 3CR Radiothon?
I feel good. Get a warm inner glow by donating to the 3CR Radiothon.
It's like giving money to the family.
It makes me feel good.
All right.
It feels like I'm playing a part in the economy, which usually I don't do.
How does it make me feel? Well, it gives me a great feeling of satisfaction.
Great. Might go to heaven.
Great.
Good.
The 3CR Radiothon kicks off in June.
And we need your support to keep radical voices and issues on the airwaves.
There is no other radio station like it.
To donate, go to 3cr.org.au.
Call the station on 03 9419 8377.
Or drop in at 21 Smith Street, Fitzroy during business hours.
3CR. Sound On for solidarity.
It's important that people just become involved in any sort of activist group.
So if you're interested in this, because no movement at all ever happens. As we say in the U movement, it's never given to us. We have to fight for it. We have to demand it, and we have to demand that we have the fundamental human rights, which we can afford. And that one way to do that is a group that a few of us started and a few of us doing the degree. It's called the Sustainable Prosperity Action Group, NARM.
Yep.
So we do regular meetups. We did a little bit of an event after Finding the Money film that was basically try and just educate first of all, but also really start to think a bit politically. Trying to have this conversation around like a job guarantee, around full employment, around the fact that we need full funding for health, education, and our fundamental services of human rights. But Sustainable Prosperity Action Group, NARM's great way to get involved.
And also we drink and eat food at the pub.
We do. End of
the month. It's kind of a social group.
After the show.
Yeah. So it's good. So join that one. That's a nice, easy way. But become involved in any way you can. If you're going to change the world, you can't sit there, screaming at the TV or banging your fist. You've got to join a group. Look up MMT on the web and join a group. It's what's required. Now, we're coming towards the end of the show. We've got Mafalda with Vicky coming up next. Look, it's been wonderful doing the show with you, Kent. Thank you very much for coming in. Very much appreciated. Anyway, we'll catch you again in another couple of weeks. Thank you very much.
You've been listening to Radio MMT with Anne and Kev.
We'd love your feedback. Email us on radiommt@gmail.com or search Radio MMT on social media.
Listen to this show anytime wherever you get your podcasts or on 3cr.org.au/Radio MMT.
Support this show and the station by subscribing to 3cr.org.au and mention Radio MMT.
We thank all our guests.
And we thank economist Professor Bill Mitchell and his mmted.org, educating the masses on modern monetary theory.
And thank you to our listeners for listening. And I thank you, Kevin.
And I thank you, Anne. So what's planned for next week?
Kevin, there is still so much to talk about. We've got to expose all this rotten economics.
Well, that's good, and I get it. Do you reckon we could use a bit more music?
Well, I made a list of all these terrible economic theories. Like, I've heard of the theory of comparative advantage, or the quantity theory of money, or the loanable funds theory.
Have you heard of a band called Single Gun Theory? Like, they're a really good band. I'm sure there's a whole range of, like, macroeconomic music that I could bring into the show.
Yeah, but we really need to do marginal productivity theory, not to mention the natural rate of unemployment and the money multiplier.
You've got a pretty good singing voice. I play bass. Bill, he plays guitar. I reckon we could form a macroeconomics band. Like, we could deliver this whole message by music.
Well, we could call the band the Permanent Income Hypothesis, or the Ricardian Equivalence, or Rational Expectations.
I think we're onto something here. We're trying to make macroeconomics more interesting to the masses. We're going to form this band and sing it to them. And we're going to bring the economists in. We're going to get musical.
You've been listening to a 3CR podcast produced in the studios of independent community radio station 3CR in Melbourne, Australia. For more information, go to allthews.3cr.org.au.